Woodland Cree First Nation Chief Isaac Lebucan Avram is seen taking the injunction and putting it in a nearby fire pit.
Throughout the month of May, in a remote region of northern Alberta, Canada, a standoff took place between a First Nation and an energy company. Sounds typical, right? No, this was more complicated. For starters, an oil and gas company had requested an emergency court hearing to seek the arrest of a Cree chief opposing a drilling project on Indigenous land.
It's over?
It's over. There was no intent on their part to negotiate.
I've covered many confrontations between resource companies and First Nations, but I could tell this one was different as soon as I set foot in Woodland Cree territory.
We believe in sharing prosperity. You know, First Nations people are very generous. I think we're born that way. You know, if we see somebody hungry, we feed them. If we see somebody cold, we help them. That's just the way we're brought up.
This pro-industry First Nation and their blockade were supported by many local, non-Indigenous industry owners and workers. They joined the Woodland Cree in asking Obsidian Energy to hire local, mitigate environmental impacts, and share profits with the First Nation. But Obsidian's confrontational American CEO seemed to think he could bulldoze through local opposition. Stephen, do you have any time for a brief
Rangers in 6.
After failed attempts to negotiate with the company, the Woodland Cree First Nation erected a blockade in the form of a traditional camp in early May to halt Obsidian Energy's access to their traditional territory near Peace River. Soon after, Obsidian was granted a civil injunction against them. It was a conflict that threatened to have far-reaching implications for how resource companies interact with First Nations across Canada. In June, Obsidian reached an agreement with the First Nation to end their blockade. Although the terms aren't public, it's clear Obsidian were forced to walk back from their earlier, more confrontational statements. Could this be the start of a new kind of resource fight? One that pits Indigenous and non-Indigenous locals against corporate investors? This is the story of how one small First Nation partnered with local industry and forced a multinational to listen to them. Tensions escalated on May 13th when Woodland Cree leadership, including Chief Isaac Lebucan Avram, stormed out of a meeting with Obsidian CEO Stephen Lucas, who jetted in from Calgary. Lucas is American, but the company is based in Calgary. Woodland Cree members suspect he isn't well informed on Indigenous rights and the legal duty to consult.
We're in the early innings of executing on that plan. Very happy with the start that we have to date. We've outlined production that, was approximately 36,000, BOEs a day.
Some Woodland Cree told me Lucas comes off as arrogant and disinterested in good faith negotiations. He sure wasn't interested when I asked for comment.
Rangers in 6.
What the heck does that mean?
And my repeated requests for interviews with Obsidian reps have been ignored.
I need to transfer your call, but that is the number that I have for the media department. 1 second. And did you already left a voicemail?
Yes.
Requesting a call back?
Yes, I have. This conflict's been brewing for a while. As far back as 2 years ago, when the Woodland Cree learned the company was planning to drill 200 more wells here. They don't seem to care that this is unceded territory. First Nations signed treaties with the Canadian government when Canada was established. The treaties stipulated First Nations access to traditional territories and rights to maintain their livelihoods. Industries like Obsidian are supposed to consult with First Nation treaty holders about any developments affecting their territories. But that's not what Obsidian is doing.
Well, this I believe is definitely years in the making. This didn't happen overnight. We acted overnight, we reacted overnight, but this has been definitely accumulation of many different circumstances. The campus here is due to an awkward relationship, manipulation, lack of integrity. This company is basically saying, hey, we don't got to work with the locals. But I'm saying, hey, you should work with the locals. Obviously, you don't have to, but you should. It's the right thing to do. In this peace area, it hasn't been as economically hot as other regions in this province.
Obsidian has filed an application that has yet to be heard by the court, an emergency application to specifically have Chief Isaac Labucan Avram arrested and jailed until the blockade is taken down. And that's a pretty bold move.
The injunction was not surprising. Research that I participated in the Yellowhead Institute published a couple of years ago makes it very clear that resource extraction companies such as Obsidian have a very strong record of success in obtaining injunctions against First Nations and Indigenous groups, even on traditional territories, even on treaty territories. And this is Treaty 8 territory.
I reached out to Irina Carrick, an expert on injunctions granted against activists and Indigenous groups.
The way that the courts issue injunctions mean that, issues such as Indigenous legal orders or the existence of Aboriginal or treaty rights under treaty or under the Constitution are just not taken into consideration when these sorts of court orders are obtained by corporations. The corporations can just say, we have this licensed project, regardless of, how well that licensing process was carried out. This group of people is, impeding our ability to carry out this project, and we're going to be irreparably harmed, meaning that we're going to lose so much money and time that cannot be addressed later on. And then the courts, tend to take those arguments very seriously. And injunctions in this sort of situation are not unusual at all. What is really unusual, and you mentioned this yourself, is this attempt by Obsidian to go back to court and attempt to have a sort of second procedure issue, this arrest warrant. And that's unnecessary on a legal level. Once a court order is issued, there will be an enforcement order within that injunction that says, in this case, it's the RCMP, you can enforce this order. That includes taking people into custody if necessary. So the police have that power. It's not like the police can't arrest the chief if they choose to. So what I'm seeing here is an attempt to sort of, sidestep the discretion of the police and attempt to have a court issue an unnecessary and I think highly unusual arrest warrant.
Obviously, that's outrageous. I think the courts also understand the repercussions that would have and the precedents that would have. And I don't think that is a responsible way forward or a respectful way forward. And that's been the issue all along. I think to move forward, whether it's with industry, government, even family, you have to have integrity, understanding, respect, and response. You know what I mean? Like, there's principles and even corporate principles that have to be met. We're not just all about the money, but we are in a way saying, hey, if you do want to make money, we want to make money for our people as well.
At the heart of this conflict, industry and government circumventing treaty rights, and First Nations have had enough.
I definitely don't think there's a good understanding of traditional rights, treaty rights, land acknowledgement, etc. It's been very intrusive what Obsidian is doing to us, but it's also showcasing to the world of there has to be better ways to get work done, so to speak. I do understand that there is a need for our resources to be in the global market. You know, I think it actually might make the world a better place. I think Canada needs to do a better job of getting investors into this country, but working with the First Nations in partnership to get that done. We take responsibility for our destiny. We have our own rights to our own self-determination, you know, and that is definitely different than what others might assume for us.
When our ancestors and the people in Treaty 8 entered into treaty more than 100 years ago, there was an understanding that the parties were both sovereign entities with unextinguished title to the lands. When they entered into that international treaty agreement, it was two sovereigns, and the Indigenous side of that party understood that they were not giving up anything, including the land and resources of the lands that they would have referred to as their territory.
I reached out to Janice Makokis, an Indigenous scholar and member of Saddle Lake Cree Nation in Alberta, to understand more about how treaty rights play into this.
And so what happened after that was almost immediately after treaty making happened, the Indian Act was set in play by the federal government, which corralled our people onto these small parcels of land referred to now as reserves, so that we would be able to have full access to lands outside of the reserves for hunting, fishing, trapping, and other things to maintain our livelihood and way of life. And so that territory is inclusive of everything within the treaty territory. So everything within Treaty 8, as the Woodland Cree are under. So there's a significant misunderstanding between our people's understanding of the treaty and the Crown government's and industry's understanding of what that is. And I think that's where we see these conflicts happening on the land, is because we're still exercising our inherent and treaty rights as we understood them when our ancestors made that treaty, and the Crown and industry have a completely different understanding. And so that's why we have these conflicts that exist on the land.
Don't you think that those different understandings that the government and industry have is pretty convenient for them?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because it benefits them to continue to oppress and use colonial laws and legal instruments such as injunctions or, through the courts to advance their interests in the name of the public good or the good of the company and for economic development reasons, whatever that is, or whatever arguments that they're making to advance the interest of their company.
But they don't look at the public interest in regards to the interests of First Nations, whose sovereign territory that is and whose livelihoods are connected to that.
That's right. Exactly. They don't consider First Nations as a part of the interest when they're considering the interest whose rights, lives, and land that they're impacting when they're out there, doing what they're doing on the land to make profit from resource extraction taking place.
The Peace Oil Sands is referred to as the mini Fort McMurray of Alberta. Fort McMurray is the extractive economic engine of Canada, pumping out billions of dollars in annual revenue. The Peace Oil Sands are also rich in untapped oil reserves. There's a ton of money to be gleaned out of here, but development goes hand in hand with the destruction of the land.
And I said, hey, this is the most environment person you'll ever see, because I was born in a bush and I knew where everything is, where the moose licks are, things like that. A lot of times they bury all that when they're working on oil field. They don't look at what we look at. We look at the whole territory. We look at where you need to put your lease. We have to be doing that, not you guys. A lot of times they don't let us do that, and they go ahead and do it without consulting us. consulting us is very thing that they should be doing. Not, they should not do that. But a lot of times they'll just go ahead and do everything. But my heart cries for the Mother Nature a lot of times too, because Mother Nature is the one that gives us this land, that gives us everything, that we should respect. We should have no garbage. We should have everything to be cleaned up after. And sometimes if you go, they're not cleaned up. When they plug a hole and the water comes out with cement, cement just shoots out. Now you have cement all over. That's not the way it's supposed to be. You have to clean this place, because to me, sometimes the Mother Nature cries so much that rains so much. But that's what I was taught. Like a lot of times you have to listen to that. You have to listen to the birds. You listen to the animals. You listen to the little creatures. You listen to the little bugs, because the bugs, if it wasn't for the bugs, the birds wouldn't be here.
So, Frank, have you been coming and has you and your family been utilizing these specific areas ever since you were young too?
Yes.
And so have you seen big changes?
Oh man, I like I said, I've been here, and we flew this 10 years ago when my brother Joe was the chief there. We flew it, and then we see the changes from the helicopter, how it changed. Like we used to hunt all over, we used to walk instead of, now you can just drive anywhere. But what keeps us from that is they're putting the gates now. This is our hunting grounds, and you put a gate and you put all this. This is where we lived. Wow. But I even see animals sort of going away too, because scared of everything that's happening, and you got your trucks all over the place, and we have to watch it.
Industrial activity is transforming the landscape, but there's another big problem: earthquakes. The Alberta Energy Regulator found Obsidian Energy responsible for causing a series of quakes here in 2022 after it injected industrial wastewater deep into the ground.
Late November, an earthquake shook houses and had people stop in their tracks. Oh my. It happened in the Peace River region and could be felt more than 600 kilometers away.
What makes this different or noteworthy is how big this earthquake was.
The 5.6 magnitude earthquake is the largest the province has seen. At first, it was thought to be natural, but a study done by Stanford University is suggesting wastewater disposal from oil production triggered it.
We are confident that this event was a man-made or induced earthquake is what they're called.
This research shows the first link between such a large earthquake and human activities this far away from a mountain range. Researchers say they've seen other quakes caused by fracking, but they believe this one is different. It happened after wastewater was injected into a well to extract oil.
The injection of CO2 also has the potential to cause earthquakes. So this is something to essentially start thinking about and maybe even start monitoring.
One of the quakes was the largest ever recorded in Alberta's history. It scored a local magnitude of 5.6. Yet, Obsidian denies it had anything to do with them and is appealing the AER ruling.
We did make a request for incremental data that, really anchored the AER's decision, as well as the characterization that the seismic activity in the Peace River area was solely attributable to, Obsidian's operations. We didn't agree with that assertion then. We don't agree with it now. We are in the process of evaluating that data. We'll have more to say kind of in that regard in the future.
The memory of this earthquake is seared into the minds of all here, including Chief Isaac. Can you talk about the earthquakes?
Oh my goodness, I remember that day I had elders calling me. I just dropped my kids off for school. My daughters were calling me from Peace River. I was taken off to a meeting. I believe I was close to the area, ready to turn around, but definitely unexpected and felt by everybody, not just me and my family, but the farmers nearby, industry. I believe it might have been one of the biggest in Alberta to date.
So did you feel it? Or?
We felt it. It was shaking houses, absolutely. I think there was 4 or 5 tremors or something. that happened. Like I said, I was on the road and I was definitely scared for my children. Obviously, when you hear about earthquakes, because they're not normal in our area, we wonder what the repercussions would be. Will it rupture pipes? Will it rupture foundational stuff? Will it hurt old homes? We don't know. Will it contaminate groundwaters?
Will there be more?
Will there be more? That's one of the biggest questions as well. You know, will they be more? Are they man-made? Are they industry-made?
Chief Isaac, like most Woodland Cree, grew up hunting, fishing, and trapping. He still gets out on the land as often as he can.
So then my brother comes looking in for me 3 or 4 nights after, tries pulling me out. He gets stuck. Then he had to walk out with my little brother to the end of the road, and that must have been, yeah, it was definitely a few miles.
So then how'd you guys get out then?
3 or 4 4x4s. Yeah.
Chains and
Everything, yeah.
Just moments after sharing stories of being on the land with me, the chief discovered access to his beloved hunting territory was blocked. Obsidian erected a gate to another industry road not far from the Woodland Cree blockade. Oh, they have a gate up.
Holy fuck.
Notice. Oh, is that there before?
No.
This road is closed. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, here's the security lady. I wonder what she's going to say to you. I'm going to get up.
When was the gate put up? Yesterday. Oh, so they did put it up, eh? I'm the chief. Just wondering what's going on with this gate. Don't worry, I'm not gonna make a big deal. I just wanted to see if the gate was put up. Oh wow, eh?
I just don't like being on video.
Yeah, neither do I. Man, well, this is very unfortunate. How many people are up this way?
I have no idea.
Son of a gun. All right. Yep.
Yeah, I'm not letting no one analyst to work for.
Which company? Obsidian? Yeah. All right, is there any other construction going on over there? Just tankers? All right, well, I'll go let them know that they did put up the gate. I thought they were going to wait for us. Like, holy fuck, the direct attack on treaty from stopping the people who live off of this land from entering their own lands. You know, how it stops us from hunting, gathering, trapping. You know, we were just talking about stories of how we used to just camp wherever. And then now we're being locked out of our traditional territories and places where we found medicine. We were finding medicine over there. They harvested moose over there. Like, we have that, and they've put a lock on it. Something has to change.
Back at the blockade, Woodland Cree members are set up along the Walrus Industry Access Road, about 40 minutes east of Peace River. It's a key access route utilized by Obsidian, which is now shut down. The company is losing around 450,000 Canadian dollars a day here, and the Woodland Cree are not alone. See, I've covered a lot of Indigenous defense frontlines. Other than a few non-Native allies that show up sometimes, I've never witnessed non-Indigenous industry owners supporting First Nations like they are here. Some have parked their semi-trucks and heavy equipment at the blockade, despite risking being blacklisted by Obsidian.
My name's Dustin Lambert. I'm from Peace River, Alberta area.
And what do you do?
I work in construction.
Awesome. What do you think about what's going on here with the camp?
I think it's a good thing for the community to stand against the oil companies when they try to take from the communities and not work with the community people. Like Obsidian has work, but they want to bring in a large outside contractor. And as I understand, like in Canada, we're free to work in all areas. However, like when you have local contractors, like they should have the first opportunity, you know, and when Obsidian goes and tries to bring the larger contractors in that have the potential to take all the work from the companies in the region, you know, and then with Obsidian, you know, trying to go through and not work with the community, being like the Woodland Band or Lubicon or any of the bands, you know, because we work through them and directly with them. And I've worked with these guys for on and off pretty much my whole life. Went to school with them and then worked with them.
Meanwhile, Woodland Cree members are well equipped for the long haul if need be.
Right here.
Blended right in.
Right here. The snare's right here.
Wow.
And that's how you put it. This is where they're working. And look at what's happening. They're taking all our rabbits, everything, animals.
The Woodland Cree have utilized these lands for millennia, but they were forced out of their traditional territories decades ago when oil was discovered here. The band was made to settle on allotted reserve sites about an hour away from here, but they've never abandoned their original homelands.
Well, it's very important because of our livelihood, our hunting grounds, our what's happening with the fires too, and that's not helping us. But with the oil companies too now coming in, that's not helping us no more. It's just destroying our livelihood right now.
Frank's been an elected Woodland Cree Nation councillor for over 16 years. He's seen industry come and go. Governments make promises and break them. Foreign companies are even more of a problem, he says.
I don't think they know what we do here as First Nations people, especially when somebody else is not from this country. That's not right, because they don't know. And we tried talking to them, we tried teaching them, we tried everything, but still a lot of people won't understand how we live here. And they need to understand us, because we're from here. We were here, one of the first people that lived in this territory a long time ago. We went up and down these rivers, everything. Every year we canoe down the Peace River. So they don't know what's going on. And they need to know. They need to listen to us too. But people, you got to understand that, you know, this is our livelihood. This is how we were born. This is how we were raised. This is what we eat. Everything we eat and the herbs and everything that the trees provide for us. The animals. If the animals are going, sometimes when we trap, we trap, it's my kids, their livelihood, and it's got to continue like this for generations and generations. We cannot stop this, because this is how we were born. We have young guys that's doing that now. This is a young guy that's trapping, hunting, and he learned.
Woodland Cree councillor Joe Whitehead Jr. has been helping oversee the camp, Grand Chief of the Kiteskinau Tribal Council, and Chief of the Woodland Cree. He's pissed that Obsidian is sidestepping its duty to consult and work with the nation.
The trust factor for our First Nation is really low with industry because of Obsidian. Obsidian is to blame for everything that's happening today, where the cops are staging over there to come in here and trying to remove people that are from the land and believe in the land. And we are teaching kids here today, and we'll still keep doing that. And we will be here forever. Obsidian might not be here for a long time until they take the resources away from our land. We're just asking for that fair, equal share of the resources that go out of here. No more of this just construction and all that. We want to be part of the solution and part of the development. That's all we're saying. And I encourage First Nations people to stand up, because this is our fight together. It's just not Woodland Crees, it's us all across this Turtle Island, all of Canada. You know, we always say we support each other, but let's have action. You know, any means necessary in terms of trying to educate Canada in terms of who First Nations people are and who we really are. And that's from the land up, and we have to protect it any means necessary. You know, there was a gate put up over here. In our treaty, it states that no gates shall be, all gates shall be open in case of hunger. But what they did was they put up a gate and blocked our chief, and that's wrong. And I'm mad today because of that. This is going to escalate if the government doesn't step in and if Obsidian doesn't come to the table. What does that say to other industries? They can start putting up gates where we hunt, trap, fish, and gather? That's our treaty right. That's nobody else's right but our First Nations people.
So we're still in that role as the liaison team.
We're speaking with you. We speak with the other side, for sure. We're not picking a side. That's why we need to be able to keep those lines of communication open. If you're saying
will be here
okay,
today,
yeah,
but they're not welcome in our camp anymore. You can stay over there, take your photos and whatnot.
Well,
but you know, so speak with the chief when he gets here.
Oh no, that's okay. And like I said, we're not here to pick sides. We've always been upfront with you in regards to that.
All First Nations that you know have a stake in this. It's just not Woodland Cree. It's everybody. We live off this land, and I think industry and government need to be educated more in terms of when they come in and try to develop the resources around us. You know, we will idle no more. We will do what we have to do as a nation to protect the rights, the treaty rights of our people that were signed in 1899. And I believe that industry needs to wake up in terms of what they're doing. You need to come to the table and not give us lies and lies after lies. You need to be honest.
The regulator's going to want to inspect too because it's not been operational, so they might be here tomorrow too.
Well, we'll see about that.
The energy regulator? Okay.
Well, that's unprecedented because we have never did that.
Do you guys know if that helicopter that's been circling, if that's the industry guys?
Yeah.
It is, eh? So they're just trying to scope things
Well,
out?
they got to do their checks. Extra police that are going to be in the area just to ensure the safety and security of all involved.
So they're not there to enforce the injunction?
It's a step up, obvious.
Well, we don't have any information in regards to what's going to happen in regards to the injunction. We're not privy to that information.
Resources for nothing.
It's, we do have extra resources there.
But to ensure the safety of all people involved, it's pretty much just one group. So the only other group is the police officers, you know. So
well, we have to be prepared for anything that might happen.
Yeah.
So if we didn't have those police here and something were to happen, then it would be how are you able to respond?
What would happen between them?
Well, that's what we don't know either, right?
Exactly.
We never know. Like we've been to lots of these type of events. There's people who decide that they want to hijack these type of events. That people don't necessarily think the way that everybody here or that you may think. As a result.
Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Living the dream.
You guys are hiding out back here?
Not allowed in here. I'm sorry.
You're hiding out back here?
No, we're just here for fun.
Is this SERG?
Sorry?
Is this SERG or are you guys SERG?
What's that? I sorry. I don't
Community Industry Response Group.
No.
Okay, so obviously.
Sorry, I don't know all the acronyms.
Okay, so you're staging, obviously, because you're hiding.
Well, we tend to stay on the road, so right. We need a place to park our vehicles. But you guys are technically not allowed in here because it's closed.
It's closed.
This place is closed.
By the police or?
No. It's just closed.
Can you say what you're doing?
We're just here working. That's all we're doing. There's nothing to be worried about.
Oh, I'm just.
If you have any questions, you guys were in touch with the DLTs.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. You guys just get to stay here.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot.
There's another way to address this, which is to look sort of more at the politics and history of these sorts of struggles. This is not the only example of courts refusing to recognize Indigenous jurisdiction. This is not the only example of Canadian law facilitating the extraction of resources at the cost of the environment, the cost of workers, or the cost of, in this case, First Nations. So to me, this is not an unusual sort of outcome of the sort of foundation of Canadian law, in both settler colonialism and in the Canadian sort of foundation in resource extraction as a sort of national preoccupation.
Well, you think that because it's 2024, because we've had the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, because we're in, so-called, building nation to nation relationships, you think that things would be different by now?
You absolutely would.
Well, we want to see, obviously, respectful, responsible industry. Obviously, we're not getting respect here, and they're not being responsible. And that, I mean that, just what you asked me about them not hiring local, other people around us. We want to see stuff be sustainable. We do care about our environment. We do care about the lands, the waters. We do feel the encroachment of industry and the cumulative effects of not just industry, but also environment, the wildfires, the droughts. We're thankful for this rain, but it's about finding that balance. We are educating our children now to become the operators, tradespeople, nurses, teachers, etc. Right? We want to educate our peoples to adapt to modern society, but as well keep their traditional way of life.
It's kind of absurd for Obsidian to start making those recommendations to the province and even to the courts and even to, try to enforce the RCMP to do something. As those that don't know the treaty, the RCMP officers were presented at the day of making treaty. And these were here for our protection against foreigners that would intrude in our way of life. Obsidian, you're intruding without talking to the people, without doing a proper process, because the government, you're listening to the government more so than the leadership that is sitting at this table. And I will say, when it comes to jailing our people, our chiefs, I think you'll see a lot of chiefs either in jail, and hopefully that the court systems or the institutions can hold all of the Canadian First Nations people in jail, because I think there is an uprising in the making, and I think at some point we need to start making those calls for that support.
Just days after the failed May 13th meeting with Obsidian representatives, the chiefs of Treaty 8 traveled to gather in the same meeting room to support the Woodland Cree.
I just want to say that Obsidian is changing the dynamics of industry within our backyard and others. For Woodland Cree, we are hoping that they remove the injunctions on myself and my people, that they remove the injunctions of our local joint ventures and their livelihoods.
And Supreme Court of Canada ruled that there must be consultation with landowners.
Treaty 8 Grand Chief Arthur Noski called on the province to step in.
Remove ACO, Aboriginal Consultation Office, AER, Alberta Energy Regulator, and a red tape ministry, because these agencies and ministries do not honor the Supreme Court ruling, the duty to consult. Premier Daniel Smith and Cabinet, we call upon you to meet with Woodland Cree First Nation leadership and Treaty 8 chiefs to establish a table for revenue sharing talks with the province. It is important that the public and industry know that Alberta government's First Nations consultation policy is their own policy. We are the sovereign nations with our own consultation processes and laws.
For decades, First Nations in Alberta have insisted the province pay up. Alberta makes billions in royalties earned from industry projects in First Nations territories. The province has largely ignored requests to share some of those benefits with Indigenous communities. But the current situation could pressure Alberta's government to change course.
When we talk about the issue that my colleague here, Chief Ivan, and their community has dealt with Obsidian, we feel those impacts all across our territory. We deal with the same issues in our backyard. We're here to support Chief Isaac and the rest of the Treaty 8 chiefs in solidarity and opposing this issue. It affects all of our First Nation people, and when we take a look at the resource development in our backyard, the government of Alberta has received over $30 billion, and the government of Canada is prospering as well. Yet while our communities are suffering, this attack on woodland community is an attack on all of our treaty rights.
It's pretty simple from our end. If you're going to come and make a livelihood in our lands, we must too. That's our message to oil and gas. You're not going to come in here and start bullying us. We're here to stay and we're ready to fight. Hi, hi.
Ultimately, this isn't just about what's happening in Woodland Cree territory. This is about a status quo that's fundamentally untenable for Indigenous peoples. The status quo must change, says Chief Isaac.
Well, just look at the GDP that comes out of our land. You know, from the forest sector, the oil and gas sector, even for the longest time, billions, hundreds of millions come out of this land. Why are, as First Nations, we still administrate poverty? Obviously, those comments that are made on greed, it's people that don't even understand the current situation and the reality of this country. You know, we shouldn't have to fight this hard for prosperity when we signed a treaty. A treaty is a nation-to-nation relationship, and that people ask about our greed, well, I think it's actually the other way around. People don't want to see us lift ourselves up. I'm not looking for a handout. I'm looking to just provide and to protect my people with our own ways and our own rights. We want to be part of the workforce. We want to develop mega projects. We want to be owners of the resources. And you darn right, it is about money. My people shouldn't be living in poverty. We deserve equalization payments. You know, the chiefs that are around this table is the economic engine of this country. The economic engine of this country. Our resources supply the world with some of our trees, our oil and gas, and we could set a good example, a world-class example of doing things right. And we need that opportunity to do things right and that collaboration with industry, government, and communities. And in solidarity with our chiefs, our brothers and our sisters. And I really want to commend them, the councilmen, the leadership, the elders, the youth. Our kids need a brighter future. 7 out of 10 of us are going to die sooner than the Canada's population. 7 out of 10 of our kids are in CFS issues. That's because of poverty. So how is this greed? It's actually the other way around, where a greedy American company wants to come dictate in our land? I don't think so.
You're talking about landowners that entered into a treaty with the Imperial Crown. How can there be anything higher than that in our lands? Where is that certificate of ownership, Canada? Where's the certificate of ownership, province? So these are questions that still remain there right now. They're just brokering deals with industry at the expense of our lands, our resources, and just leaving their contaminants behind. They're greedy for money, and it is obvious. Thank you very much.
I just want to make a quick comment in terms of why we're here today, in terms of what we're doing, and it's for our people. And I like the story. This is what my daughter does every time I go home. I see her every 4 hours, and she takes this shirt and covers herself up. And the people need to know that we are fighting for our kids and their kids for the future, so they don't keep fighting. Like, that's one thing that people don't understand, that we are passionate people, we are humble people, and we like to laugh. But at the same time, we have to protect this land, our treaty rights, for our future generation.
Now, you also said that if they were to come to arrest you, that you wouldn't surrender.
Of course not. I don't think there's a Cree word for surrender. Our seed. No, I'm here to maintain in the best interest of my community, and if I was, I know there's a lot of support that I have out there. I think Evander Kane said it best. Sometimes you gotta fuck around to find out.
I'm Brandi Morin, reporting in the traditional territories of the Woodland Cree Nation for the Real News Network, Indigenous News, and Ricochet Media.